this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today. The genus in question, when I get there, is Cattleya types. So I'll say Cattleyas, but it's not about any specific one, it's dividing them up into sets and the sort of things you would need to think about to deal with one in each of those sets, if you see what I mean, because there's some are seasonal, some are not, some have a distinct pattern in growing. There's all sorts of things to consider, and unfortunately when you just buy a random hybrid you won't know which one of those sets it comes into. But the sets are based more on species, so if you've got a hybrid that's that you can find out what's in it and get back to, you know, its sort of main components, then you still might be able to deal with it. Right, news and stuff, not a lot really. I'm now into my 4th month trying to close down our business accounts because we've opened new ones with the new bank. I'm into my 4th month trying to close the accounts. Has that sunk in? 4 months. And they keep asking me why I want to leave. It's because your service is rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Your online procedures are absolute rubbish. So I'm going to have to go into town, into the branch again, and see if I can get one of the helpful people to deal with it there and then. The problem is the account closure is an online form, and I think I know what's wrong. It's a link. So when I have to define the signatories, which is me and Lynn, to authorise the closures, when I try and put Lynn's middle name in, it puts an error up. On our mandate, the people who are authorised to do these sort of things, she has a first name and a middle name. And on the closure form, it won't let me use that. It only lets me use her first name. So I think they're sort of thinking, well, that's not the same person. So I'm going to try going into the branch. It's just driving me up the wall. I mean, the first thing, we had to change our mandate. Well, 4 weeks later, nothing. Another form, signatures, all done, sent off in the post. No acknowledgement that they've received it. And I eventually phoned up, but that took over an hour to get through on my phone, you know. And they said, oh, we did that a couple of weeks ago. I said, you didn't think to tell me? Oh, we don't tell you about those sort of things. Well, how am I supposed to know? I was waiting on a second process for that to be completed. The second process being setting me up as the main user. Because until that happened, I couldn't get to cancel the accounts. So this online form I filled in once, I think I misread it because I thought I was the only signatory required, so I filled it in with just me. They came back and said that the signatories didn't match our current mandate. I thought, I'll blow it, it needs Lynn. So I phoned them up because at the time I didn't know what was wrong, and because I answered one of the questions wrong, they locked me out of telephone banking. So I filled it in with me and Lynn. I got the same letter back saying that the signatories don't match your current mandate. Can you ring us on this number? I'm not allowed to phone them. They've locked me out of telephone banking. Oh, just go around in circles. I've never known such a bunch of children. And it's not necessarily the individuals, it's the processes. They're antiquated. You know, there's a caveman filling it in on a piece of stone. It's just antiquated. Anyway, so that's been driving me up the wall this morning, so I'm late starting. Environment stuff. We're only a day or two off of 14 hours of daylight now. Now that's not 14 hours of usable daylight, that's sunrise to sunset. Well, as we all know, when the sun rises, that's not bright light yet. It's got to get up a bit. And at sunset, the light's already being lost. So a 14-hour day length is probably 12.5 to 13 hours of usable daylight, like, you know, the proper light. So we're up and running as far as all these orchids are concerned, as far as day length is concerned. I'm using the thermostat to quite early in the day now, like 7:30 in the morning. I'm upping the nighttime temperature of 16 up to 19, and then an hour or so later I bump it up to 21. So this is to try and replicate, you know, the rising temperature in the morning when the sun comes up, because it takes a while to raise the temperature. And I'm keeping the humidity balanced with that. The response from the plants as yet is not much at all, quite honestly. There's some plants growing nicely. In fact, there's an awful lot of plants growing nicely. There's a lot of plants have now been repotted and should pull on even better. But the ones that are the troubled ones are the mounted dendrobiums, and they're not responding. I mean, I've got one that is pushing out spikes, and others that are just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. No new growth, no new roots, they're just sitting there. So all I can do is wait for a response. Oh, I can't do any more, can I? I've done what I can. So we'll see how it goes. It could be classed as early days yet, I suppose. But we shall see. I've got quite a few of my nice blooms starting to show signs of going over. The Paphiopedilum's going. It's 2 blooms have gone, and it's got one hanging in there. But they haven't gone completely. They've just, their tails have gone brown, and their lip is closing. This nice one here, those blooms are gone effectively. I need to cut that spike off, and then that will need a repot. I'd like to see a new growth starting first, I must admit. The Victoria Regina buds, additional buds, are pushing on quite nicely now. This cluster's open, the others are pushing on, so we'll have a little sequence there. Again, I'd like to see a new growth on that. Okay, it's blooming, but I still haven't got new growth. It's just nothing. The Lindleyi has not only got no growth, it's got no spikes. The Jenkinsii has got no growth and 1 spike. I mean, that was a showstopper one year, the Jenkinsii. Next to nothing this year. So they're not doing as well as they should be. And others are okay. I mean, there's a Nobleoma here. The nubbins start halfway down the cane. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 nubbins on that cane. And given that it has 2 or 3 blooms per, you know, per shoot, spike, oh my god, brain won't work. I mean, that's going to be quite a show for that one. Yeah, so I mean, some stuff's doing okay. The Miltonia that I repotted recently, and the other one that I repotted in a similar manner, taking the front leads off and potting them around the pot like that, both of those, the old bulbs have swollen up. So, you know, they've taken on board some energy sort of thing. So. But the one thing I must get on and do, I just keep putting it off. I need to get all my black pots up here and allocate black pots to things like this that have been recently repotted. If that gets tucked inside a black pot, it won't get any algae. So the only reason to repot will be that the moss is going over. But I need to get that done. Just keep forgetting. The hot box does seem to be working. I don't seem to be finding live scale anymore. The only thing I forgot to do was the last time I put the hot box on, I didn't bring the Phalaenopsis from the kitchen in here. And the Phalaenopsis have got some mealybugs, so I need to get them dealt with. Apart from that, it's virtually a bugless environment now. So I need to clean the base of the rhizomes on the Cattleyas so that I can tell, because at the moment they've still got bodies of scale on them. Well, I assume it's bodies, but if I get some the cotton wool buds and some alcohol and get all the bodies off so that they look clean, then I'll know if I've still got scale, because there'll be a reappearance. So I'll be able to tell, because at the moment I'm just assuming they're all dead. So that's that. My repotting is well underway now. There is still some to do, but there's very little that I would class as urgent now. You know, we've got past those ones that are in desperate need sort of thing, and there are some that are waiting for new growths, and they can wait. You know, if it takes another month or 6 weeks, they'll wait. So those are not urgent, they're just down to be done as and when. I can see a flower bud on her co-blossom. 1. So oh no, 2. So that's going to be a mass blooming this year, isn't it? This stuff gone downhill so bad. But we have got some stuff to look at. Let's have a look at some plants. We'll have a look at the Masdevallia in case people haven't seen this. God, that's light as a feather. That needs some water. Actually, I'll rephrase that. That needs some water now. That's dried off relatively quickly. But in the main, that's in bark with some moss around the top. Anyway, 2 nice flowers open and another one to come. Lovely deep colour, lovely patterning inside, and a giant of a plant. I'll put it down again and put some water on it later. Oh, something's gone down the wrong way. And on the subject of Masdevallias, not properly open yet. And now it's not going to open. I just knocked it as I lifted it up. I knocked it on the shelf above. So what was going to be a really nice bloom is now a bare stem. Have we got any more coming? We should have. We've got new growths on there. So hopefully that wasn't just a one-off. That's maddening when that sort of thing happens. If I hadn't wanted to show you that, that would still be on the plant. I'm not saying it's your fault. I should be more careful, basically. That plant, as that spike progressed, that plant should have been moved onto a top shelf because it was virtually touching the shelf above. So as soon as I picked it up, I took it off. So it should have been moved a while ago. But nonetheless, it's done now. There's nothing you can do about it. And what else have we got? I've got to show you this. This is an unusual blooming. I mean, I've had this in bloom before, but this is the Coelogene. Now, the last Sunday chat we had a look at the Coelogenes, I believe, and this was in bud. Well, since then, every bloom has opened, bar the top one on this second spike. They open almost simultaneously. So there's none of this one day, one the next day, staggered. It just goes whoosh, and they're all open together, which probably means they'll all go over together as well. Now this should have quite a fragrance. It has. I'm not sure I like it. Reminds me of a horse stable. Which, you know, with fresh straw in, can, for some people that's quite a pleasant smell, but not so sure. Anyway, we won't put that back on the shelf, we'll bring that out now it's decided to open. And we'll bring it over to where the open blooms are. Just for now. Right, I think I've got something stuck in my throat. So anyway, that's all the blooms, flowers, stuff like that. Oh, hang on. There's a Restrepia with an open bloom that wasn't open last time. This one doesn't bloom very often either. Oh, it's got 2 blooms on as well. This is Cattleya, Cattleya, but it's actually, although that's a species name, this is classed as a hybrid. So obviously there was an uncertainty on the pollination process. But lovely colour. I doubt if I can get that to stay in focus really close. See if I can get the camera to grab hold of it. Oh, I can't hold it still, that's the problem. Anyway, nice colour. Reasonable size for Restrepias, and second one round here. And it's had a couple of others that I've missed, that have gone over. But, what's that one? There definitely isn't anything else. So that's that lot. Right, the Cattleyas then. The sets that they can come into. Set number 1 is what I would call the obvious one. New growths in the spring. Yeah? Mature that cane through the growing season into the autumn. So that's the growth of set number 1. That can be followed by a sheath which does nothing until the spring, or it can be followed by a sheath and buds that bloom late autumn, early winter. So it's the same growth pattern but not the same blooming pattern. And then depending on what it did with the blooming, if it bloomed late winter and autumn and it started its new growth in the spring, what's it going to do through the winter then? Nothing. So what are you going to do about watering and feeding in the winter then? Nothing. Don't drown them. That's when roots can rot on those types of Cattleyas. Now if it's one that puts out a sheath and no buds, it's finished maturing its bulb, it's developed its sheath, and it's not growing any buds yet. So is it growing anything at all? And chances are no. So it doesn't need load of feed and water again, does it? Yeah? And they're a strange one because you sit there looking at the sheath and sometimes it will go brown and dry up and you think, it's failed, and then the buds come up in the spring. And it blooms in the spring, often accompanied by the next new growth, which will grow on through the growing season. So that's that type. And then you get the other type that grow on through the winter slowly but surely and don't mature their bulbs until early spring, at which point they bloom. And sometimes those bloom quite late, you know, heading towards summer. Yeah, so there's that type. Now, what else? When do they grow their roots? Because that's important for repotting. Irrespective of blooming or anything like that, or any other care, Cattleyas need to be repotted, especially the bifoliates, the single leaf bulbs. They seem to be a bit sturdier as far as roots are concerned, but the bifoliates are a bit more sensitive to root disturbance. And again, that's not across the board, not every single one, it's just generally speaking. When the new roots start to grow, repot if necessary. If it's in a pot with good media or in a basket where it's okay and it hasn't hung over the edges or anything, well, don't repot then. Save it up for next time. But when do these roots occur then? And again, different types do different things. You get those that start a new growth, and as that growth progresses, it will produce roots. That, I would say, in your mind, would seem perfectly normal. It does to me. Yeah? Then you get others that push up a new growth, and it grows on, and the leaf or leaf comes out, and it matures, not a sign of any roots until it's mature. Then it grows the roots. And then there are others. Now this, you can look at this two ways. It's the same thing but said differently. There are those that mature their cane and don't produce their roots for that cane until the new growth starts for the next one. So you could say those roots come before the next growth. or you could say they come after the one that's just gone. It's the same point in time, just another way of looking at it. But it pays to get to know when your one or ones do their roots, because that's your opportunity to repot should it be necessary. And when those roots are young, you know, centimetre or two long, with their nice bright growing tip, try not to touch them or knock them, because they will break as easily as anything. Now some people like to leave them till they're longer because they're less likely to break. Well, I'd say they're more likely to break because you've got to get them down in your media now, whereas, you know, if they're only just starting, that rhizome can sit on the top of the media and they'll grow into it, which I think is a safer option, you know. I mean, if you're careful and you don't break roots and stuff, do it your own way sort of thing. But many Cattleyas will, as a matter of course, progressively dump old roots. And that's if you do nothing. So they're happy in their pots, they've got room for their new growth and it grows on. And unbeknown to you, the back end of the plant, the roots have died. You don't know, and it doesn't matter, because that's how that type grow. And then you get another new growth and you think, oh, it's getting near the edge of the pot now, I think we'd better repot that. And you get it out with its nice new roots just starting, and you have a look at it and you think, oh, half of these roots are dead. It's actually natural. It's not the end of the world. That's what they do, some of them. A lot of it depends on where the roots are. Orchids produce roots, epiphytic orchids, growing in trees and stuff, tend to have two types of roots. They have a root that grabs hold of things, that stops it falling out the tree. And then they have aerial roots or feeder roots, the ones that can take in the nutrients and moisture from the air if necessary. They do tend to come from moist places. So it depends how your roots have gone. The fact that we put them in pots with media of some sort, there's gaps in that media and obviously some media that they can grab hold of. But they end up often being half and half. So they've grabbed hold of some media and some of that, the same roots, is in air, in gaps. So they're never quite sure what they're up to. But I've certainly, from pictures of Cattleyas in the wild, the old roots that attached those older pseudobulbs actually look okay. And the ones that have died back were the aerial ones, as the plants progress, you know, round the trunk or out from the fork of the tree or whatever it's up to, or up the trunk, whatever. But the roots that seem to attach don't seem to die back, they seem to stay there. Worth noting if you grow yours mounted, whatever. The one thing that seems pretty common to all Cattleyas is the wet-dry cycle is important to them, and they like it to be relatively quick. It doesn't have to be daily, like some would prefer daily. Things like Talumnias, they like a daily wet-dry cycle. They get their moisture in the morning from the morning dew, and if there's no rain, that's all they get, and then they get some more the next day. But in the meantime, they've dried out. That's how they work. Well, Cattleyas like that wet-dry cycle, but it doesn't have to be daily, so they can stay wet, carrying on absorbing their nutrients and moisture for some time, but not for long periods. Oh, define a long period, Roger. Depends on your temperatures. If you're running at quite high temperatures, like, you know, the 26 upwards, then you could probably expect your Cattleyas to dry on the second or third day. I'd have thought that might be about right. If, however, you're in much lower temperatures, like say I was in the winter, well, they would dry on the second or third day because they didn't get much water. Not drowning a plant when it's not growing in cold temperatures, because it would just stay wet, and that's when the roots rot. When they stay wet when they're not being used. So, you know, it's like all orchids. If it's not growing, if it's not doing anything, it doesn't need much water or feed, because it's not going to use it. That's what those pseudobulbs are for. they store stuff for times of harshness or neediness, and that can be a drier season, for instance. So yeah, Cattleyas, most of them like warmth. They like middle of intermediate up to the higher end, and some of them go into the warmer grower bracket. Don't think there's any hot growers. There aren't many of those anyway. But some Cattleya types, certainly a couple of the Lalias that I can think of, actually will put up with quite cool temperatures. They don't need so much heat by any means. And there are some that if they don't get very high light, they'll grow lovely, but they won't bloom. So some of them, the intense light is a trigger for blooming. And without that, they won't. I've got one of them. Flipping nuisance. My Lalia purpurata needs high light to bloom. I mean, at the moment, it needs to grow before it's going to have any chance of blooming. But yeah, so Cattleyas are many and varied, and size-wise, they come from miniatures to giants. You get the little miniatures, like the what was Sophronitis, you know, little pseudo bulbs, you know, and a centimetre or two long, and a leaf 2 centimetres long, and that is their size, real miniatures. And then you'll get others that, you know, that have got a pseudo bulb half the length of your arm and a leaf as big. And everywhere you move that plant, you knock something over. They can be quite strappy. So yeah, but I would say relatively safely, I am sticking my neck out because I don't know this for a fact, but I would say within the Cattleya hybrid range are the largest blooms. I mean, I've seen a Cattleya with a bloom 6 inches across. That's a massive bloom. You only ever get 1 or 2, you don't get a big cluster of those, but they are stunning. Longevity on Cattleya blooms is not great. 4 to 6 weeks is probably about average. Some will last longer than that, and some last quite a bit less. Some are down sort of the 2.5 to 3 week phase. I don't think there's any of the sort of opens one day and dies the next type Cattleyas, but some of them are quite shorter lived than others. Colours right through from pure white to deepest red, deepest purples, lovely yellows, lovely greens, magentas, yeah, the full colour range except true blue. There ain't no blue ones as far as I know, unless they're dyed. There are some varieties that have got cerulean within the name, which means they are nearer blue than other varieties. It just means they're closer to a blue. They're not blue. They're a shade of purpley, pinky, you know, bluish. It's like Victoria Regina. That's classed as near to blue as you can get. Well, yes, at first glance you think, oh, blue orchid, and then you look at it again and think, that's nice purple. It's not blue at all. But it's heading that way. That's the way they look at it. So, right, so that'll do for today. I've still got some repotting to do, so there will still be some repotting videos. The Project Orchids have kicked back in as of the Friday just gone, with the appropriate low number of views. That seems to be how they are. But as long as the views I get are enjoyed by people, I will carry on the project at least till the end of this year as planned. Whether I do Project Orchids in any shape or form next year, I haven't decided. So that remains to be seen. But it is a video that takes up a daily slot that I can predict is not going to get that many views. Sometimes it's half of what I would normally get. It is that low. So I'm sacrificing views and potential channel growth to stick with that. But it's a planned project. It will be pushed through to completion. And I suspect what happens is within the 8 orchids, there are people that have got a favourite 2 or 3. And they watch those, but they don't necessarily watch the others. And then that's not the same people on each video. So it just means the total views on the video are a bit low. But on the concept of the channel growing, my subscriber numbers are creeping up. They're not rocketing, but they are moving upwards. And they've come back to a rate that's noticeable, whereas there was a doldrum period back in midwinter when the numbers were just static basically. So they've started to grow again. So thanks for all the new people that have joined the channel and subscribed. And if you're watching and you're not subscribed, it would be nice if you did so. Just remember that when you subscribe, you don't have to switch on notifications. And with a channel like mine, quite honestly, it's hardly worth having notifications on because I post a video most days. So the only reason you would have notifications is to know that it's there. Well, it's just as easy to have a quick look, isn't it? Ooh, he hasn't posted one yet. But, you know, most days a video gets loaded. And unless you really dislike a video, do the old thumbs up. That helps the channel grow as well. Those are the two things going on that YouTube keep their eye on. Their algorithms are not quite so fussed on subscribers anymore. It hardly comes into it unless it's going down. The number of views, consistent or growing, they like to see that. That's good. But everybody will have a video that gets a real high number and a video that gets a low number, and often the person who makes the videos doesn't even know why. Why did that one take off then? Well, that was a really good one and yet it didn't take off. You know, it's unpredictable, quite honestly, and a lot of it is random people searching that just come across your channel and watch it. You know, so that varies. But the algorithm is geared up to retention both within a video as a self-contained unit and the channel as a unit. So basically somebody who comes in from the outside, this is not people who've already subscribed and seen the video on their notifications feed and have gone to it. They're a different set of people. People that come in, start watching that video, if they're still there in 30 seconds, YouTube puts like a marker that video held their attention for the 30 seconds. That's their magic number. And then they have a look at how much of the video they watched. And then there's a graph I can get on my stats that shows like that initial one, and then it starts to drop off. But unfortunately, what happens, you know, they said like the retention on this video was 70%. Most people that started watching it were still there 70% through the video. But then they change it to minutes, or seconds or minutes, but a time, like that. And the time is important because they want you to be on YouTube a long time. What happens if it's a 2-minute video and people have watched nearly all of it, or all of it, because it's only 2 minutes long? It was only 2 minutes, you weren't here long. Well, that's wrong. That video got watched in its entirety by lots and lots of people, and yet you get no credit for that because it was only 2 minutes long. They like longer videos and they like people to watch them through to the end, and preferably go on and watch an end screen or watch another video selected from the channel. They like you to stay. That's the retention bit. So they like you to watch as much as possible of the video and possibly on to the next one without going off to another channel. And the worst thing is somebody who started watching your video and then leaves YouTube partway through. They don't like that because they think that your video kicked them out of YouTube and they didn't want to stay at all and watch anything. And I would imagine that's rarely true. But they're algorithms, you know, it's just bells and whistles, clockwork and bells. Clockwork and lights. That was the expression I was looking for. Where does that come from? What film was that expression used in? It was either lights and clockwork. No, it was clockwork and lights. Who said clockwork and lights several times? But what was the film and who said it? No, actually, that. I mean, I like the film a lot, but I don't think it was a big hit or anything like that. Right, so that's that. And thanks for the people in the Patreon, my patrons. They seem to be hanging in there. Those that are there seem to be staying. I've had some that have dropped down a tier so that you're not contributing quite as much each month, but they're still hanging in there. That's brilliant. That's really appreciated. And the buy me a coffee, people pop that up now and again, and I've activated a different setting on that now, because that was a flipping nuisance. You get a couple of people buy a coffee or a couple of coffees like that, and I go in and have a look and say it's like £18. They won't let me have it. It's got to go over 20 before I'm allowed to withdraw it. So I've actually activated another setting now, which is immediate payments. It goes via Stripe, I think it is, whatever Stripe is. But it means I don't have to keep going and looking at what I've got and setting a manual withdrawal. It just happens automatically now, so I don't have to worry about it. So that's good. And yeah, I'm not here today. I am at the big Bonsai Expo in the K2 Arena at Crawley, and I said in my repotting video yesterday, I made the decision not to go on the grounds that when Mojo's awake he's quite upset, and having me around and comforting him seems to be helping. Literally, I will stop what I'm doing, so if he wakes up on the bed upstairs, jumps down off the bed and starts to cry, I'll stop what I'm doing and go up, so that I cut it short. So I'm not leaving him to yowl on and on and on, even if it means getting out of bed in the middle of the night. I'm trying to get to him as soon as I can and give him some comfort, and hopefully he'll come out of it at some point. But the thought of going to the K2 thing, to get there for sort of a reasonable time and have breakfast, I'd have been leaving here like 6:30, 7:15 in the morning, and I'd have got home about the same time. So he'd have been on his own all day, and I don't think that's very fair at the moment, so I decided not to go. And I won't be going for those big long days out until things settle down. What's here is more important. That's that. I also said in that video that people keep telling me stories of how they've lost a cat and they got another one and this happened and this happened. I'm not getting another cat. I've been to the proper websites, not just one person out of 100 that happened to have a good story to tell, and they suggest not. With an elderly cat that had bonded and then there's a loss, they spend quite a long time. It can be up to 6 months, but normally 3 to 4 weeks at least, trying to work out what's changed and what's wrong, what's different. And another cat will just add more stress. An unknown cat in their domain where they've lost their buddy. So I'm not getting another cat. Not now. So there's no good telling me all these wonderful stories. I mean, I'll tell you one story somebody put in a comment. They had a friend that had lots of cats, like lots, teens. And there were scraps going on all the time, because cats don't always get on. And some cats, as a pair, never get on. Hannah's 2 cats don't get on. They never will. They don't get on. And they're stuck with each other, so but yes, this particular person had lots of cats and decided to bring home a kitten, and the older cats killed it. So take it seriously. Some cats will not tolerate another cat encroaching on what is their special place. So I won't be getting another cat. I know there's lots of stories of people who've, my cat was left on his own and I got him another one and they made friends, and yeah, it happens. It's not guaranteed. So we'll run along the lines that we'll leave everything as it is, and then eventually him and me will get used to it. So and then we'll think about a future, but not now. Right, so that's that. I've been cracking on with repotting the bonsai. It's a messy job, it really is. It's funny actually, I got the table outside so that I could repot outside and make a mess out there. And the one bonsai that I would have had to, I will have to do it outside. I missed the window, the leaves opened, I missed it, I missed my chance. So I now, all the other bonsai are small enough to bring in and do in my tray. So I got the table to repot one bonsai specifically and then missed the chance. But I've sat out there a couple of times with a coffee or a glass of wine, so the table will get used. So that's good. And now we're getting into the better weather without the cold. I'll be able to get on with the rest of the bonsai staging in bits and bobs. It's the staining that's the problem, because it has all the timber has to have 2 coats. The first coat must dry, which means it can't be too cold overnight or it won't dry properly, and you can't leave it to dry for more than a certain amount of time, otherwise it will cure. And if it cures, it becomes waterproof, and the second coat won't go on because it's waterproof and it's a water-based stain. So it needs 2 consecutive days where I'm willing to coat up the staging in day 1 and then go out and put the second coat on in day 2. And it's dried because it wasn't freezing cold overnight. So we're getting to that point now, so we should be able to get on with it. What else? That's about it really. As I say, there's not a huge amount going on, and you know, when you've got a plant with one single bloom on and you pick it up to show people and break it off, it's not really good, is it? What I'm dreading is it will happen in the not too distant future is my nice odontoglossums. They're going to go over at some point, and that's all that colour in that area will just be gone. It'll be all empty. And the cymbidium, I can smell that from here now, so that is wafting around. Do you know what? It's just come back to me. I had another orchid that had a pleasant smell, and this is my previous version of this some time ago, and the one with the pleasant smell in the old place was on the rack near where I water, so it was under my nose practically, and then Coleogyne nitida came out and opened some blooms, and the next day I went out and I started to water. I actually looked at the bottom of my shoe because what on earth is that stink? That's horrible. The 2 fragrances had reacted with each other. The nice one was no longer nice, and what is just about okay was evil. You know, I said it smelled a little bit like a horse stable, you know, with fresh hay and stuff like that. Well, it smelled like a not so fresh horse stable. Yeah, and I had to separate them. I had to put them in opposite corners, you know, blue corner, red corner, because the smell was revolting. You know, if I want revolting smells, I'll get bulbophyllums. Oh, here's a bit of news. Most of you won't know what I'm on about, but quite a long time ago now, so this will be only people that have been around for some considerable time, there was a young lad on YouTube called Archie who grew bulbophyllums. Very knowledgeable in that genus as well. And he faded, he stopped doing his channel. He commented on a video the other day, and quite a long comment as well, so I replied and everything, what you've been up to. And he's hoping to come back. And he's hoping to come back with a totally different genus to what he used to grow, so it won't be bulbophyllums. And I said, well, I'm going to Burnham's for their orchid fair, which is middle of May, something like that. I just said, be there. And he replied saying, I'll be there. So I might actually get to meet him again. He's a nice lad. But I haven't seen him for... Last time I saw him was when I took Lynn and Christine to the Welsh study group site in Aberglasney, which is deepest Wales. If you go much further, you fall in the sea. It's the first time I ever realised there was an end to the M4. And obviously all motorways have got an end to them, but I'd never been far enough into Wales that I dropped off the end of the M4 onto A roads, and some, to get to this place. God, it took us ages to get there. and ages to get back again. So it's too far to go, quite honestly. It's just too far to go. It's just too much driving and too long a day for what ends up being, it's just orchids, isn't it? And it'll be Burnhams, it'll be Tray, it'll probably be Lawrence, Hobbs. It's often the same people, often with the same plant, And I can see that a lot more local without going into deepest Wales. I've never been that far into Wales, I don't think, as I said. Much further, you just splooped in the sea. But a gorgeous place to visit, lovely grounds. The grounds were stunning, and the lake, nice food in the in the sort of cafeteria, restaurant sort of thing, and a nice day was had. But to repeat it, it's just too far to go. So it became a one-off, unfortunately. Well, and then the pandemic kicked in, so it was cancelled for the next few years. It's on again this year, I believe. Early September, I think their show is. So, people that are in West or Southwest or Northwest Wales that are always complaining they've never got a show to go to, well, you've got that one, I mean, I nearly did 110 miles today to go to a bonsai thing. Mind you, that was good roads. Well, some good roads, not all good roads. But yeah, so there is that show in deepest Wales. But I won't be going to that. I was thinking of having a day at Wisley, because the bulbs will be out. The last time I went was for the orchid show, and the gardens everything was delayed because of that horrible cold snap we had. We didn't have a good winter, quite honestly, and so the gardens didn't look as good as they should have done at that time of year, but they would now. And I've got a card that gets me in for half price as well, but again, it would mean being away from here for a whole day. The gardens will be there next year. That's the way I'm looking at things at the moment, so we'll see how we go. Right, I'll get this processed and posted. There isn't much. Quite honestly, Sunday Chat's one of the easiest videos for me to process, because there isn't any. I just load it. Just put it in the software and say, produce, and it comes out with a single file on the end, and that takes knows how long to load onto YouTube. Twice. But yeah, it's for me it's a simple video. It's simple to produce. No editing, no mucking about, no adding soundtracks. Occasional pop-ups, but not very often. It's quite easy to do. So we've had a chat about Cattleyas. I hope there was something useful for people in there. It was the sort of chat that didn't really warrant picking up plants. Because I wouldn't have examples of the different types at the right stage to make it worth looking at them. otherwise I'd have got that sorted out. Not that I've got many Cattleyas left now. A lot of those lost their roots in that bad escapade that I had, and never recovered really. And I've also lost a couple this winter as well with the cold. And there still may be some more that might not recover properly. Those silly long-tailed tits pecking at the window again. They are comical. They might come round and start banging on this window in a minute if I keep still. Yep, there we go. He's behind me somewhere. Oh, he's on the bonsai outside. Pecking around for the tiniest of insects. Anyway, I'll let you get on with whatever you're doing after you finish watching this, I'm not going to do much for the rest of my today. I think there's some snooker on. I'll see if I can fall asleep in front of that, and we'll see how we go. I haven't got much on the cards for videos this week. I have got a care collab coming up for Nina. Your Orchids organises all that. That all went quiet for some considerable time. I know the reasons why, but it's been decreed that it will restart again. I suspect the organiser is restarting it with conditions like, it either needs to work properly or we won't be doing it anymore. Some channels are not playing ball apparently. The one that I'm doing hasn't got lots of channels taking part, so it's not so much of a big deal. The one that I think is today is Paphiopedilums, and there's a lot of channels, some of which I've never heard of. A lot of channels. And when you get a flood like that, it's blatantly obvious people will only watch a couple, whereas if there aren't so many, most of them might get watched. There is a balance there somewhere, I presume. But the main goal of doing the care collabs is to put the information out there so it's available, so that searches will find what people want. That's why it's got the hashtag care collab on it. But anyway, I've got one coming up. Can't even remember what it's for. Must be something I've got. Dendrobium aphyllum, and I don't think it's going to be in bloom in time. But so for me, it would be an update rather than a first time. And I can actually join in with the care collab and show a Dendrobium aphyllum that's probably one of the worst ones you'll ever see, because my dendrobiums have just not had a good winter. They didn't have a good growing year, went into the winter weak, and quite a few of them just haven't come out the other end, and what's left are struggling to get going. But at least that one's got some buds on, about 6 I think. Anyway, I think that might be this week, I can't remember, but it's coming soon anyway. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Thanks for all the contributions in the various, guises that go on. It is helping. So my running costs for this place through the summer are not going to be anywhere near as great as they were at the other place, because in the other place I was always fighting to keep it cool. I don't have to do that here. But I did notice, along with the day lengths, the sun, when it came out yesterday, was about 10 centimetres up onto the roof. So it's started, and that will progress a bit farther up each day until it gets to this halfway point, which is why there's shade netting on this half of the roof. Don't need shade netting on that half because the sun never touches it. So when we get to the longest day, the sun will, if the sun's out on that day, the sun will be on that halfway line. So all of this part of the roof will be lit up. But it is at an angle. The sun does come over at an angle, and the roof slopes away from that angle, so it still doesn't generate much heat. We're still having to artificially create heat. Still, if I'm going to keep the collection going, then I've got to create an environment that's suitable for the majority of what's in here that came out of the winter in some shape or form. Now, those that didn't are no longer here. They have ceased to be. I nailed them to the perch, they'd have fallen off a long time ago. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Oh, I'm going to tell you a joke. I heard there's a comedian that does YouTube videos, and he likes to bring back the old comedians. Now, on normal television and stuff, a lot of those old comedians are not allowed on, because the comedy in those days, today, would, for a lot of people, would be classed as offensive. If it's funny, it's funny. The subject might be something that shouldn't be made fun of, if you see what I mean, but comedy is a funny thing. But basically, he was on about some guy was driving along the motorway, and police car behind, and the lights came on, and he speeded up, and the police car had to chase him, and eventually pulled him over and said, "Why on earth did you speed up when we put the lights on?" And he said, "Well, a couple of years ago, my wife ran off with a policeman. I thought you were bringing her back." See you next time.